My favorite is the little chicken that pops up. he's like he's like crying because he lost his foot. Sorry, everybody, we're late. This is Chicken Foot Podcast, and by everybody, I mean the two people watching right now. Hey, two people just came on. Thank you, welcome. Leave a comment, just say hi. We are gonna talk about dads and comedy today. How you doing today, Mr. Arthur Spooner?
I'm doing well, before we get started, I just want to make sure to reiterate our sponsors.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, it's good. We're making money now.
So the Razor Pillow Razor has been a big time supporter.
Pillow Razor?
Oh, my mom's watching, so this is going to be pressure. So,
does she know how much we're making from Razor Pillow?
Well, the Pillow Razor has been sponsoring our podcast for a long time, but they've come out with some new products. The new one is the Razor Pants. Now, if you're like Judah and your wife is always riding you to shave your legs, then the Razor Pants are perfect for you. You put them on in the morning, silky smooth legs in the evening. So just go to the Razor Pants website.
It sounds like a
The promo code is Judah Buddha Silky Smooth.
Oh, mercy. Dude, that sounds like a bloody mess. Can you imagine? You pull up a razor. Ooh.
Well, they are...
The Frank and the Beans, if you know what I
mean. All right.
So today we are going to talk about dads. I'm sure we have some stories concerning funny stories about our dads. I feel like I've told them already, but I'm sure there's more. I know you have some stories, but you came up with the idea. What were you thinking when you think comedy and dads? What do you think?
Well, I always think silly stories. See, a little blood is worth it.
What do you mean?
That's their catchphrase.
You got to go buy some. That's their
catchphrase. Remember, the catchphrase is a close shave and a close call.
A little blood is worth it.
Yeah. So when I think dad and humor, I always think of sometimes it's kind of cheesy, obvious play off of words kind of thing.
Dad jokes.
Dad jokes, for sure. Why do you think dad jokes got a reputation like that?
Well, first of all, I think that's what happened to Joe's.
Razor pants on his head. I used the razor pillow.
Well, okay, so here's the thing is that I've thought about this, and it's not that complicated. I think it's dads typically do this kind of humor because their audience, they're not working with a real sophisticated audience as a dad.
That's
and
true.
Not only is it not hugely complicated and sophisticated as an audience, but it's they're gonna laugh at everything. That's the wonderful thing. So wonderful thing I realized is not only do I have a captive audience, but my audience is laughing at everything. So I'm the world to them. I remember one day my son said, he said, "Dad, I think you could be up Hulk." And I was like, "Oh, son, I'm not." He's like, "You're the strongest man in the world." And like, first of all, that made me feel like $100, but I also thought, he's not too smart, you know. He's
still a little.
No, I didn't think that, but I did think like, oh, that's part of being, you know, still their brains and conception of the world is still growing, and but I also thought, you know, like, oh, he thinks I'm that strong, huh? Like, you know, maybe I could start getting him to tell other people, you know, that I'm this strong. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because it reminds me of when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm built like my dad. I mean, you've seen when I grew out my facial hair,
Yeah.
and so sometimes, like around my eyes, if I get acne, and it'll swell up and get really big,
Oh.
and so like it'll look like a bump, like I hit my head on something. And my dad's the same way. Well, he had a pimple right here, and it was like a huge bump when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I asked him, I was like, "What is that?" Because it really stood out. He's like, "I'm growing a third eye," and I was like, "Whoa!" So I went to school. He told everybody that my dad was growing a third eye. He has three eyes, and I think that the teacher ended up talking to my mom about it, and she was like, "No, your dad was just kidding." I was heartbroken because I really believed it.
You thought so? You thought? How old were you at this point?
I must have been in middle school. I think I was like 25,
Okay.
25, 26 years old. I was like in middle school.
Get out of here. Well, you're in middle school and you believe that?
I meant like elementary school. Yeah. Well, your dad tells you.
Yeah, a third eye. Interesting. Well, so why is it that like dad jokes? The thing that sort of bothered me is that dad jokes have sort of become like, I don't know, like a bad thing. Whereas how is it that if it makes people laugh, it's like not good? Because the other day, I had the perfect dad joke. We were doing a mock draft, and sorry, I'm trying to get something going for us. But we were doing a mock draft, and one of the guys said, "This is really intense," and I said, "Yeah, it's just like camping." And everybody was quiet. They're all doing the draft thing and quiet. And he's like, and just kind of like off the hand, they're just like camping. And the other guy's like, "How's it like camping, dude?" Yeah. And I was like, it's intense, like camping, intense. And everybody just groaned. But that was funny, right? Yeah. You laughed. Yeah, I laughed.
I think, it gets a bad rap. But I actually think it's just about people's type of humor, and like you said, you're working with an audience that's younger, so dad jokes are known to be just like one-liners, and you got to be okay with that kind of humor. Some people, it's not sophisticated. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right. And in the sense that we don't have a sophisticated, it's so sophistication is like complication, and so higher thinking, higher level. And so dad jokes are just common denominator type stuff. It's like fart. So yeah, that's what I think dad jokes are. It's like fart jokes, but it's like clean fart jokes, or like fart jokes that aren't about farts or poop or gross stuff. It has that same feel of like, that's lowest lowest level type stuff, dude. Come on,
that reminds me. My nephews, when they were growing up, my brother was telling me they had the poop pee song.
The poop pee.
And they would go pooping, peeing, peeing, pooping, peeing, pee, poop. And they would just sing it. And then my brother had to tell him not to do it anymore. But he was like, "But I thought it was funny." I thought it was funny, but I still had to tell him not to do it because they would sing it in public. They were like pooping, peeing, peeing.
So that brings up something for me. Maybe this gets into a controversial area, but there's not mom jokes, right? And I think there is something about, let me adjust the camera a little bit, getting close, talk about the controversial stuff. But there is something about dad. So I, as a counselor, going to school, getting my counseling degree, I did a paper on attachment in dads and the importance of dads. And I found in my research that a lot of a dad's role is to basically get them off the nipple. You know, is like to show kids that there's another world out there, and they typically soften the blow with fun and humor. And I wonder if that's just a natural, innate thing to men in importance in, you know, later. And so dad jokes is like part of that. Is it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. On one hand, dads get an easy audience. On the other hand, kids learn that, you know, that there's somebody other than mom. There's a world outside of mom. You know, you can get good things like laughter, fun times without a nipple, without a boob.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I wonder if it has to do with when you're born and you make that connection with the mom. You know what I mean? You like a lot of time they'll have the baby lay on the mother's skin to skin.
Yeah.
And so you are already, you make that bond with the mother early.
Yeah.
And strong.
Absolutely.
And then you're constantly always trying to make that bond with your with the other parent.
Well,
you know,
it is that
you're already bonded with the first, and that's like home base. Mom is like home base. And then if dad's like the first base, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to life. And so they're kind of like getting a little bit further, but they're still within the safe zone.
Well, dad, and this is what I wrote in the paper, that dad is their first friend. Mom isn't a friend. Mom is basically an attachment of them, you know? There's very little difference between their thumb and mom. It's like when it's like they're and not too long ago they were part of their mom, you know? They were one person. So their first friend is dad. And so socializing mostly comes from dad. And how important is comedy to that, you know, just like you're saying, it's like the first person you want to impress or the first person you want to you know, have any kind of social like not interaction, but like social, what would you say, like you want to impress, you know, social back and forth with, you know, that isn't, you know, that's outside of your essential needs and just that body function type stuff is dad. And so comedy, go ahead.
Well, do you think that that's kind of a modern way of looking at it? Because I mean, I while you're talking, I was thinking, you know, I mean, in the 20s or 30s, dads were kind of more distant, and they were just teaching like life skills and work and stuff. But being a friend,
but that was well, no, even back then they were distant, but children. What is this? My first friend was Joseph Rose.
That's totally false. That's Jay Nass. Although he was my first roommate.
He was your first partner.
Yeah, first partner roommate.
First person you slept in the same house with.
Yeah.
We no, that's together. Not true. No, you didn't. But no, I don't. I think that was a modern thing. That was a modern American thing that actually destroyed a lot of lives. A lot of kids grew up sort of dysfunctional because they didn't have more. But even in those, you know, we look back and look at movies and stuff, characterizations of how it was, and though, you know, looking like we have even stories about our grandpa, but even in those characterizations, if you really talk to your grandpa, or, you know, they still had times where goo goo gaga and joking and dad jokes and stuff like that. You know, Jay Nass.
I'm not going to acknowledge that one. That one, we'll let that one slide.
All right, so I hear you, but I think that was actually a more modernistic idea of what the dad should be, just going to work and not talking to kids. And I think it actually hurt a whole generation. I think you had a lot of kids growing up that didn't know how to interact with people well. You get a lot of the hippie movement, or just like they went the other way, right? They overcompensated and like, yeah, love, gotta hug everybody,
Yeah.
gotta have sex with everybody.
Well, I
You
wonder
know?
if some of it has to do with World War II baby boomers. A lot of the fathers were gone, and
Yeah.
mothers were also out working.
Yeah.
And so, the sense of like independent became this huge thing because a lot of people are, what do they call them? Latchkey kids,
Yeah.
where you got the key to the house, you come home and you're able to open it up. And so I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
it's not that moms can't do it. It's not that moms can do it, right? Obviously, a lot of moms have to. That's, they have to be the first friend. It's just I think there's something easier for dads because it's biologically. I
yeah,
do agree
Jay
that,
says that it seems dads have often been characterized as distant.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about once before. It used to be people their job is where they lived. You know what I mean? Like you would
Yeah.
have a store and then you live above, or,
Mhm.
if you were a blacksmith, you just lived right over there. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it was like your kids were always around your job and you were always around your house. It was kind of like an all in one kind of thing.
Mhm.
And as modern society began to come about, you can't build cars where everyone's at home.
Mhm.
You know?
By the
So
way,
everyone's gotta go
ironsmith.
there.
We don't use that term anymore. It's ironsmith now. But yeah. I mean, everybody was.
that was a dad joke that didn't land.
You laughed. It landed.
It landed, but I'm not gonna tell you where it landed.
Well, anyways, I think I think you're right. It was a completely different world, and industrialization and warification of our society really changed things.
How do you see, getting back to the humor aspect of this, how do you see kids taking their father's humor just like a little bit further? Now that you have kids and you see them, are they telling your jokes? Are they kind of taking your jokes and then making it a little bit further? How are they like taking your type of humor and then moving it forward?
That's a good question. Well, the thing is I'm not really a jokey guy, right? Like we've already seen on this podcast how hard, like I am not good at writing jokes or telling jokes.
Yeah.
My humor, it seems like
Jay
when,
says, think of funny or comedians. I don't see many females taking on the comedian. Or
we've
would
talked
say
about that
class
before.
clown. That is like when you're growing up and as a kid, and if you're telling jokes as a boy, you're a class clown. That's like a place for you.
Mm-hmm. It's
For
a
women,
role. That's a role
Yeah,
for
I don't.
men.
I don't think girls when they're younger, that was a role they could fill. So that idea that being a class clown.
Well, and see the difference between my daughters and my son. To get back to your question, my son copies me. My daughters do. They still do copy me, but sort of like in a way that they're more embarrassed of me. So when the dad jokes thing, they're like, I do see them take on some of the humor, but my son is very. I think you mentioned this. He's very good at, like, I've always been good at when somebody is trying to mock me, or be funny, like playing off that, like instead of getting offended, I'll sort of like deflect it with my own little joke, jabbing back at you, and. I noticed my son doing that more and more the older he gets. It's funny because he used to be, he changed a lot. When he was a little kid, he would cry. Anybody would laugh. Even if it was like
because he thought, I remember when I've gone over and he, and I would make a joke, he thought I was making fun of him as opposed to just making a joke and it's okay. And then I remember coming back months later, and he had matured, and he is so Judah. This is a Judah thing. This is a total Judah thing, where he was eating a sandwich, and then you came by and you took a bite out of a sandwich, and you said, I took a bite out of a sandwich, and he goes, I like my sandwiches with bites in them. And he just kept, I mean, that's like a Judah answer. Where he's like, I like it with bites in them. And that's totally a you thing.
That I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
And that's when I noticed a difference in him and his humor changed.
Matured a little bit more maturity and
to be more like you. Well, no. We started 15 after, right?
It's been 20 minutes. Yeah, so we got about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes left. All right.
So, do we have any? Is it story time? Because if it's story time, I got some.
I got story too. So you go first.
Okay. No. I mean, I got some. As in, it's time for story time.
Oh. That's a good one. I like it. All right, let's see what my mom says on this one. Joe, talk about dad. Joke, dad.
So, like maybe.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've talked about this one before. It's when we would be crying and whining.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I don't remember.
You don't. Oh, well, you'll remember when I do it.
All
so
right.
we would be crying and whining and stuff, and my dad would go, "Oh, you want to suck a tit?" all the time. And so he would do that to my grandkid, to the grandkid, he'd do it to us. And my brother did it to his kids. So that's a Rhodes tradition.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, that is classic dads and separation from mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like making fun of it. It's like.
That exactly is exactly what you're describing. Remember, you're.
Yeah.
Sucky sock. Sucky sock. Oh, okay. Well, that is a story, but that's not.
We'll keep it for another day. Because you got a story, right?
Yeah, I got a story, and it's about my dad.
Okay.
Sucky sock. I'll write that one down because I might do that one next week. All right. So,
okay.
When we were kids, and we got the first Nintendo, the original Nintendo. And so my dad was playing, and we had two TVs in the house, the main TV and then TV in my parents' room. And my mom didn't like the Nintendo on the main TV because it kind of made it screwy. So they put the Nintendo in my parents' room. So my dad would play it all the time, like practicing and stuff. And one of the games we'd always play was Zelda. And he was like so into it. And we'd also play Mario Kart.
Yeah.
I'm sure you played Mario Kart. And you can hear him in the room practicing, and he'd be yelling at the TV. He'd be like, "God damn it, Donkey Kong, you son of a bitch!" Mario, because they would like hit him with the red shell, and like he would like lose. He'd be winning, and you'd hear him, "Princess, you whore!"
All right.
Because he's playing and he's yelling. So we had this game, and let me share it because some people have probably never seen this game. It's called pro wrestling.
Oh.
Yeah. So so we had this game. We were playing. This is
original Nintendo.
Nintendo game, and you basically had like 8 characters in it. And I mean, the original Nintendo had like A, B, and up and down, select and start. So there wasn't a lot of buttons, and so you were limited on so many moves. But my dad, and he would always play with us all the time on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Desert Shield came about,
and
so my dad volunteered to go, and so he went, and it then turned into Desert Storm, where they defended Kuwait and everything from Iraq. Well, anyways, so my dad was at E6, and he is getting out of the military soon. So he was probably somewhere between 35, 38. And in the military, if you're that age, you're the old timer because a lot of people are like in their mid-20s or younger, right?
Okay.
And so their wife sent them a Nintendo. And they sent them a lot of games. And one of those games was pro wrestling. And so they would be playing and they would betting cigarettes and stuff. And my dad would come over and like, because he's the old man, nobody expects him. He'd be like, huh, what's this game right here? What are you guys playing? Let me try this out. Like, and he's like doing all the moves. He's beating everybody because he knows all the moves because we play all the time at home. He's playing all the different areas. He's beating everybody. He's like, oh man, did I win? Is that what did I win? And so he would beat everybody, and they were like, man, Sergeant Rhodes, you're good. He's like, it was the first time I saw it.
He acted like he's just a natural at video games.
Yeah, he's just a natural.
Well, I don't actually have a story. I have to actually sit down and prepare some stories because I've run out of the ones I always tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are a bunch of stories. I'm trying to think of one now. I know we only have about 5 minutes.
Well, I got one. Maybe I've told this one before. I think.
Okay.
And it involves my dad and my mom. So if she's still watching, she's probably not gonna like it. We when we were kids, we used to do this thing where if someone would yell, we would like, whoa, and like hold on to stuff and be like, oh, G-forces, and like we'd hold on to the wall, like, oh, I can't hold on. And we like if we would be in the grocery store, my mom would yell at us. She said, "I said stop." We'd be like rolling on the ground, whoa, like the wind's blowing and all that. Rolling around all the time, and so one night we were all at the dinner table, and my parents, they sit at each end and the kids on the sides. And so my mom and dad were talking about something, and then my mom's she yelled and she slapped the table and yelled. And then my dad picks up his plate. He's like, whoa! we all died laughing. He's like, whoa, G-forces! I'm beginning to think our family is one big comedy act. Well, if you see the little picture that my mom has, my sister, me, my brother, that might be true. That might be true.
Well, I have so I grew up with my dad sort of playfully making fun of other people, not really. It's kind of like that. And so the only story that comes to mind immediately, I need to start writing them down, and I will. But is the story he'd always tell about my mom. He would there'd be some funny stories about my mom. He'd always tell this joke and he would just start laughing out loud. All of us as kids were kind of like, it's kind of funny. Yeah. He'd always say, like, one time your mom and I were out on a date, and it was like she was really trying to impress me, and she was like, because my dad's he's like a philosophy major, really intelligent guy, and my mom's smart too, and so she was trying to keep up and really like be cool and impress. And they were out with other philosophy students, and like a lot of smart people, and so. Anyways, they're talking at one point. They get to they're hiking, and they get to the top of the hill, and my mom notices that one of the guys has like a Band-Aid on, and she's like, oh, what happened? And the guy's like, oh, I cut it. And she said, oh, how'd you cut it? Chopping carrots? And my dad thought that was just so hilarious. He's like, they apparently at that point they all like cracked up, but he always talks about it because it's like, so now it's like whenever something comes up, we're always like, oh, how'd you get that, chopping carrots? Because it's so specific. And why would he have carrots?
Jay says that the knife in the toilet with your dad. I have talked to Judah about telling that story, and I still have to get Judah to okay that story. He's not a big fan of that story.
All right,
because of the audience. So,
it's Father's Day. Go ahead. Father's Day. You've already said several cuss words, so you might as well do that.
That's true. So this one is definitely not for the faint of heart. So if you're easily disgusted, then this is not the story for you.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. So I was coming home from school. This is high school. And the way our house was set up, it was a very narrow house. And you come in the kitchen, and right off to the right, there's a bathroom. or you come in the front door, you go up the stairs, and there's a bathroom. So when you're in the front, you could see like 2 bathrooms like that. So I had to take a huge huge dump. So all right, so my mom's like, gross. She does not like the story, so she might.
I don't either, I'll be honest.
Jay likes it, so I got a request for this story.
Okay.
So I had to take a huge dump. So I'm in the bottom one, and right as I come in, my brother's like running to the bathroom, and I like get in there before he does. And he's like, and I shut the door. I hear him go, "Oh God!" And so he runs upstairs to go to the bathroom, and I'm in there, and I'm like, oh. And so my dad's like knocking on the door. He's like knocking, and I'm like, I'm in here. He's like, hurry up. And so he goes upstairs, and my brother is up there. And so I can only imagine that he's like at the bottom of the stairs, like looking for the first door open. Well, I pooped, and it was so big that I flushed the toilet, and the water would just flush over it, and it just sat there, and like it wouldn't move. And I'm like flushing a couple times because I know my dad's out there, and so he's like, come on, hurry up. And I was like, so I just put the lid down there, and I opened the door, and I'm walking out, and he's like squeezing in. He's like, hurry up. And I sit on there. We had these radiators in the kitchen, and I'm sitting on there, and I'm snickering to myself.
Oh my gosh.
And so right at that time, my brother comes down, and he's like, oh man, I went upstairs, a huge hunk of turd. I was like, turd. And you can hear behind the door, my daughter's like, oh. And he opens the door, he's like, oh my God. And so he's like, trying to flush it, and we're laughing, we're crying, like, so we're not helping at all. And so my dad, he had to get a butter knife. He had to go in there and like chop it up. And then
come on, man.
He was so disgusted, he threw the knife away, and he couldn't even go in there because he was so disgusted. So he goes upstairs, and my brother's like, yeah, I had laid a huge hunk of turd too. And so my dad's like, oh my God, not again. And we're crying. We're just laughing. We're laughing so hard. Our stomachs are hurting, and we can't even. We're laughing so hard. We're like not even laughing. You know how like you laugh so hard where you can't even laugh, and your stomach. Like, yeah. And so my dad sat us down, and he just like yelled at us, and he's like, I'm going to ground you, and you have to take prunes. He's like, there's no way that's humanly possible. This is just not right. This is unhealthy. And he was talking about grounding us and stuff, and that only made us laugh harder.
Poor man. What were you guys eating?
I don't know.
Dang.
That was it was like we couldn't even write that. I mean, there was no way. And for years, I would tell that story. Not enough fiber.
Not enough fiber, your mom says.
For years, I would tell that story, and then I started thinking, Jay's like, it's the best dad story. I would tell that story for years and years, and then I was thinking, I wonder how much I was exaggerating. Taking liberties and doing stuff. Yeah. And then my brother told the story to my cousins, and it was almost pretty much the same.
Exactly. Really?
It was maybe like it was a little different because it's his perspective, but it was the same story. And I was like, no, it's the same story. I'm telling the same story as my brother's telling. And that's when I knew that I was like, because you know how sometimes stories will evolve in your head and they would get carried away, but it was pretty on target.
Well, that's our episode. Hate to leave you with that imagery, but it was pretty funny. I have to admit.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
are you gonna do your thing?
All right. Well, our sponsor. So, again, our sponsor is brought to you by the Razor Pants. Get up in the morning, put it on. If you're like Judah and your wife's always hounding you to shave your legs, well, at the end of the day, you have silky, smooth legs. So just remember the promo code Judah Buddha Silky Smooth.